Creating a successful business has never been so simple. Welcome to the Journey of Entrepreneurship podcast. Your hosts, Richard Phipps and Ross Lerorio, will provide valuable insights that will help you turn your ideas into reality.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Journey of Entrepreneurship. My name is Rosler and I'm here with my co-host, Richard Phipps. How are you doing today, Mr. Phipps?
Hey, awesome as usual, my friend. We try to keep it that way.
Glad to hear that. This week we're going to discuss something very integral as far as the planning process for entrepreneurs, business plans. So what I'd like to do is go through the different sections, get your insight on what the focus should be and what details should be included to make sure that our listeners are successful as far as creating a business plan.
Awesome. That's a good way to sort of make sure we get started on the right foot, especially as entrepreneurs or serial entrepreneurs. And the thought, I heard somebody suggest recently, a serial entrepreneur is an entrepreneur with multiple successful businesses. And I was excited to hear that because before I was hearing serial entrepreneur is a person with multiple businesses. But the word successful made all the difference.
Exactly. We've discussed business plans, you and I, before. Something that you said to me a while ago that stuck with me for a while is when creating a business plan, it doesn't need to be 1,000 pages or 500 pages. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by all of the different sections and the information that's needed, but it's really more so of a general outline. So if you feel more comfortable making it a little slimmer, feel free to do so.
So, I like the topic of business plans. I've seen roughly a one-page business plan. It was called a real estate agent easy plan or easy business plan. And I said to myself, man, if they can make a one-page business plan, I think we ought to get it down a business plan from multiple pages to something more simple. But keeping that in mind, the business plan has many components. And in order to convey to a lender or an investor that your business is what it needs to be to meet their expectations, requires some thought and a good bit of detail. So, although I wasn't joking when I said I'm familiar with the one-page business plan. Mm-hmm. A one-page business plan will not be enough information for your lender to open up its coffers to your business. So you want to be mindful of what their expectations are and be able to meet their expectations as well.
Exactly. To jump into it, one of the first sections I'd like to discuss is the company description.
Well, I like to say a business plan covers who, what, where, when, and why. And it's basically who you are, what you do, when you do it, why you do it, and with whom you do it. So the initial part covers who the business is. People want to know who they're doing business with as a company, but they also want to know who the authorities behind the business are. What is the experience in the business and time? What is the academic or educational knowledge or base relative to being able to determine the expertise with which the business will operate? So people want to know who you are as the business operator or operators, and they want to know about the business, what it's going to be doing, and the who, when, why, where, what pieces of the business. That's sort of put in a nutshell for the who the business is. It's essential, as I said, for the institutions that might be looking at you for funding, but it's also essential in terms of your public persona as a company. People want to know that they're doing business with not only with a credible company, but with credible individuals. So it's an important piece to be able, in the introduction to the company or the company overview, to outline the officers and their experience, both academic, you may want to include resumes that speak to the not only experience and education, but interest in knowledge in that specific field.
I think you pretty much covered everything, but just to reiterate with the company description, it's definitely the backbone as far as defining the type of business you're in, a brief description of your business, when it was created, and the leaders in your business like you mentioned. Something that I didn't necessarily think of that you brought up I think is great is the resumes of the executive team that you have that can really create some legitimacy as far as a new business for somebody who's been in the industry for 40 or 30 years. Creating a new business really speaks highly to the quality that you can expect from that business, which isn't there because it's a new company. So I think that's a great idea.
A lot of times the investors that are looking at a business, or even knowledgeable people that are evaluating doing business with another business, they look at the experience of the executive staff, because if the individuals at the executive level does not exude confidence in terms of their profiles, then people are reluctant to do business with them. There's a certain question mark as to, am I going to have a good experience? Do they have the knowledge and experience to provide the service I'm looking for? And if that's not clearly reflected or outlined as part of the focus of the company profile, it leaves some question marks. And you don't want question marks when you're trying to get out and do business with others.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, that kind of leads us into our next section as far as answering a lot of questions, market analysis.
So, if people listen to our program, they're going to think that we have something, either a string of hair salons, or we have something against hair salons, which is not the case. So we promise you that's not the case. It's just easy point of reference. But if a person decides to go into business for themselves and they haven't done the analysis to see if there's a need for that business, it tends to suggest that there will be a lack of success if there's already a great deal of competition, unless a person can define themselves in such a way or differentiate themselves in such a way that they stand out above all the competition, which can be very difficult sometimes to do unless you've given it a lot of thought. Now, the salon example, or any other small business, laundromat, everybody does pretty much the same thing in the same way in most cases. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to do business, any type of business, whatever that business may be in the community, it is important that you analyze the market in the community that you intend to set up your business. In other words, who has what market share now, and how can you compete with them to access some of that market share? How can you garner your own piece of that market? What do you have to do in order to get a piece of that market? For example, and these are just numbers that I'm going to pull right out of the air, so do not rely on them as statistically accurate. I'm going to say, let's say you open up a laundromat, and in an area where there's 500 homeowners and 30 apartment complexes that house, let's say, 150, 200 people. Let's say 200 people in each complex. So if you have 30 complexes and you're housing 200 people in each complex, that's 6,000 people, if my math serves me correctly. 30 times, okay? So between the 6,000 apartment dwellers, if you open up a laundromat in the basement of each of those 30 units, you're going to get a certain amount of business, right?
Right.
A certain amount of those people are going to go out to other laundry facilities that they're more comfortable with, home, work, whatever, but they're not going to use or they may say, okay, well, the area where the units are is unsafe. I feel threatened. I don't want to go there to wash my clothes. So for some reason, you're not going to get 100% participation. So given that situation, now as an entrepreneur opening up laundromat, you have to look at the complexity and the complexity of the community you're working in, and actually the people who live there. You know, do they have other apartments that do not have wash and dryer systems in them? Do they have homeowners that don't have wash and dryer that would prefer or must go out because of affordability? They can't afford the wash and dryer themselves. That must go out and use laundromats. So, you know, it would be essential to do that research, because if you open up a laundromat and you have 500 homeowners and they all have washers and dryers, and you have 30 units and they all have washers and dryers in them, you are going to starve as a entrepreneur setting up or the likelihood, I should say, is that you're going to starve as an entrepreneur setting up a laundromat in that community. Would you agree with me?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So based on just that thinking alone, it's essential that whatever business you're going to start, whether it's a laundromat, I mean, we can talk the same thing about hair salons. You know, in some communities, there's one in every corner and one in the middle of the block. Yeah. So, you know, is it feasible to come up against that sort of competition unless you have something very special, something very unique? Now, you know, recently I heard somebody had to suggest, and I thought it was very clever, that you can define yourself and become the only one of a kind. So, for example, if you decided that your business was the only one of its kind operated by you because of your uniqueness, and the uniqueness could come right down to a person born on a specific day in a specific year, wearing a specific type of clothing at that moment, at that point in time, with a specific skill or talent. So it was very unique the way they developed the uniqueness of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to do those things might make a difference if you can get to that level of detail. But generally speaking, our entrepreneurs, that's why we do these conversations, so we can encourage them to look at ways to not only analyze the market, understand the impact on their business and the revenue stream to them, the success of their business in that marketplace, but to be reasonably well placed competitively in the market so that they are operating a business that can or will make a profit based on the effort that they put into it.
Definitely. And I would just add on to that we're definitely not saying that if there is a laundromat or a salon in your area that you shouldn't look into doing those things, or any idea that you can think of has probably been already done. And that shouldn't necessarily discourage you from your idea or what you want to do. It's just what we're saying is you definitely have to be very strategic in the way that you go about planning it and how you're going to attract customers to your business.
Very important point. Attract customers, because you can do all the planning you want and all the strategic planning and market analysis, and if you don't find a way to attract customers, that could be the death knell of your business. So thanks for highlighting that, Ross.
Let's go into organization and management.
Key points. We started that early when we talked about the highlighting the knowledge of the executives as well as the experience. The management of your organization is a key component that people look at in terms of whether your business is likely to last for a length of time or whether it's likely to fall on our hard times almost immediately. But speaking of the management and organization, it is essential that your business is well organized and that people have specific responsibilities that complement each other to make the business move forward, to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there can be overlapping responsibilities, but for the most part, you want each person to have a clear responsibility, not only responsibility, but a clear level of accountability for their responsibilities. And then, as a collaborative or collective, that all these parts come together to make the whole, with each person being responsible to the other for their contribution to the success of the organization. Now, ultimately, the CEO, president, or the person, the cheerleader of the whole operation, the owner of that operation, ultimately has the responsibility for everything that occurs. But being able to have individual players that total the sum of the parts of the organization is very important. And you may have the typical corporate structure: the president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, board of directors, or you may have maybe a one-man operation. But if it's a one-man operation, you still have to have people that support the operation that you can delegate responsibility to. It takes more than one person to run a business. And you may say, well, yeah, it's my business. I own it, I run it. But, without customers, you still need customers. Without vendors, unless you're creating the product. And if you're not creating the product, you still require the raw materials. If you're creating the product, you still require the raw materials to create the product. So no man is an island unto him or herself. We all need someone somewhere along the line to enable our success.
Absolutely.
So businesses are just the same. A business created is just a business created unless it has the momentum and vision, and unless its leaders have the vision and momentum to keep the business moving forward. So as we speak about organization, the different tiers of organization, the different levels of organization required, and not only individually but organizationally, that those pieces would include human resources, sales, and training. All the components that make a business and keep it in tune with the times and the needs. That falls into the organization, and the management the organization as an essential part of being sure that the organization is able to meet its goals and objectives under the guidance of the people selected to be responsible for its management.
Exactly. What about the service or product line for the company?
So most companies provide a product or service in order to exchange that product or service for revenue streams. The bottom line is you have to determine as an entrepreneur what's your product or service. But once you decide that, then you have to make that product and service of such a quality, unique quality, that people will want to acquire your product or service as opposed to your neighbor or the other vendor down the street. And that requires market research as well. You have to find out what your buyers need, what they don't like about the other products or services available. Then you have to be able to work to incorporate those likes in your product or service and eliminate the dislikes. So it's you said earlier, and I don't remember if it's this episode or another episode, but you said planning is an ongoing process. You don't plan and stop. You just have to keep improving the plan that you create to meet the needs of the operation or business you have and the clients it serves.
Right. I think there are so many different stories about companies that start off doing one thing and then completely change what they were intended for. Mm-hmm. A popular example, I'm not sure if too many people were aware of, there's a site called WorldStar Hip Hop, which has a lot of different videos of different things, and some are great, some are terrible, but essentially the site was started to promote hip-hop artists, but it's completely changed its focus from that. Actually, it was mixtapes, I think, at the time, and they've completely changed their focus. There's still a lot of music involved in what they do, but their main focus is almost like a user-generated video site. So you have to definitely understand what your market is and maybe be flexible enough to incorporate some things that you didn't originally envision as far as your product.
That's a very good point, Russell. When you engage your clients, the clients may, based on their needs, recommendations, suggestions, and sort of not compel change, but if you don't make adjustments to accommodate them, you'll lose them. So, but you have to do that within the integrity and confines of your plan as you work to accommodate some of these individual suggestions or recommendations in order to stay true to your vision.
And what would be your thoughts as far as the marketing and sales section?
Marketing and sales. It's a very changing piece. This is the piece that has to be constantly massaged till you get it right. And getting it right depends on the audience you're serving and how your demographic changes, because if your demographic changes, your whole plan might change. So the marketing of a product or service, first off, the product or service dictates how you market it in some way, in some form or fashion. You can market beverages and cold water a certain way with certain images that excite people. However, that's not the same way you would be able to market mental health service. That's not the same way you would be able to market, let's say, athletic activity, sportswear or something. So you have to take into consideration the product and the audience as you design your marketing plan, because your marketing must appeal to the audience that you're trying to reach in order to bring them in the door or into your revenue-generating portal. So there's a lot of thought that has to go into this. Sometimes it can cost several dollars in terms of several hundreds of dollars in order to sort of do the necessary market test and research to find out, one, if there's a need, how big is the need, and what your competition is doing, how you can compete successfully, whether it's going to be on, I seldom recommend competing on price. Price is not a very good way to compete. Now, in the big chains, price may be a strategy, but even those big chains, whether for grocery stores or department stores, they change pricing in such a way that it is difficult to really compete, because they have specials that bring you to the door, but you come in the door for a special and the price of something else you want is offset by the price you get on the special they invited you in to purchase. And that's only one area that, I think of. So as marketing is designed to promote certain products or services, the other big component is, who is your target? Is it kids? Is it parents? Is it older clientele, or more mature clientele, as I would say? So all of the pieces that must be considered in order to hit the target as far as the market is concerned certainly has to be identified and incorporated in your marketing. There was another piece to that question that you asked, Russell, and it slips me. I remember marketing with advertising.
Sales.
With
yeah.
Sales. If you're going to sell anything, it has to be priced competitively. But as I said earlier, I don't want to suggest that people compete on price. If you compete on price, for the most part, it could be a losing proposition, because there's always somebody that's be willing to go for take a couple pennies, a couple dollars less than you. So do not compete on price, would be my recommendation. Compete on quality, compete on service. Find special areas in which you can compete. A hairdresser may compete by being a specialist with African braids. Another may specialize by being a specialist with weaves, which is different. I know others specialize with micro braids. So just in the salon business alone, just those three specialties can set your shop apart and be the specialist in that area. And it's all three of those items are very unique and require special skills. So if you have the skill, or you have a person on your team that has the skill, it'll be a good draw for people looking for those specialties. Some people have travel agencies, and travel agency, some people specialize in cruises. Some people specialize in all-inclusive vacations. Some people specialize in religious outings only, retreats, I should say. So there's a way to identify the needs and then to determine how to capitalize on that need by becoming a specialist in the area of service or product.
And I think that's something that I've had to learn along the way is when you start a business, you kind of want to start it with the mindset of making your idea as specific as possible, finding out what that niche is. And that kind of helps the process with a lot of the different things that we've discussed so far as making a business plan, with the market analysis, the company description, the product, and of course the marketing and sales. Because once you have that specific niche and what makes your business unique, it kind of helps everything fall into place as far as structuring and coming up with ways to make your business different. And like you said, not to really focus on the price point, because it's shown that if the service is good, if the product is good, if the customer service is good, people are willing to spend the money for it. And there are tons of different examples of that. Maybe one of the most recognizable would be Apple. Apple makes cell phones, and they make laptops, and they make certain products that a lot of other companies make, but they're known for having a quality product that can fit different demographics as far as their customer base, whether it be young adults or someone that's a senior citizen. It's easy for all of them to find use of their product, and it feels like a premium product. Whether it is or it isn't is debatable for some people, but the products are very well put together and marketed well.
And that's really true. The word that comes to mind with Apple is proprietary.
Exactly. Last but not least would be our financial projection section, but did you have anything to add as far as the marketing and sales?
No, I was just thinking in terms of, marketing and sales will depend a lot on what's budgeted for that activity. So, and that's all part of the bigger budget. And as we talk about bigger budget, we come to financials. The financials of a business, as you know, Rosler, what institutions count on to get lending institutions count on to get a picture of what they can expect or anticipate from a specific business. And to the extent that the financials are adequate and accurate, allows for better understanding by the institutions of what a company's potential is. Because that's what they look at mostly, that the numbers tell them the story, tell the picture, create the picture that tells the story. So it's important that the entrepreneur work with competent professionals, a CPA, to be able to put the financials together. There are some knowledgeable, certified accounting individual who may not be a CPA but has some knowledge and skill. And there are people who have gone through school for accounting but have certificates instead of the certification as a public accountant. And, public accountants, certified public accountants, or accountants, as we know them in a general sense, who have gone through the process, they may all have the capacity to produce the financials you need to paint the picture necessary for any institution. But the bottom line is it has to take into consideration your revenue, your projected revenue, if you're a startup, your expenses of operation, the expenses of including the product costs or service costs, service generation costs, and then it has to give a clear outline of the profit you anticipate to make, because that's and how you can generate that profit, because that's what the institutions are looking at as a way of ascertaining that you're a credible risk as far as their dollars are concerned.
Absolutely. And the financial section, the projections, I should say, is, especially for a startup, is really difficult to kind of ascertain how much you'll be making, because it's completely new to you. So how would you kind of suggest one would go about creating that information?
So there's a couple ways you can do that. You look at, earlier I said we got to do the market analysis. We have to look at what other businesses are doing and what they're charging, and you have to be competitive. Although you don't want to compete in price, you have to improve your service. So in this particular section, basically you're going to be looking at what it costs you to produce whatever you're going to produce or to operate whatever business you're going to operate. And then you're going to have to determine what's going to differentiate you and what value that differentiation has. I saw an entertainer just recently, as a matter of fact, last evening, and I can tell you that the majority of the audience that I either heard or interacted with, and there were many, in line going, I pick up information wherever I go, whether in the line going in, whether at the box office, or whether while I was seated inside, or walking through the aisles, or talking to the bartender. And that was an essential part of the research, not that I was drinking. No, I'm just kidding. But the reason that the majority of the audience was there yesterday was because this entertainer entertained without vulgar language. And that was the bell that rang with everybody yesterday. Not everybody. I'd say I spoke to at least 50, 60 people during the evening. And I would say at least 35 to 45 of those said specifically they were there because they didn't want the ears to bleed. There were comments that indicated that it was because this entertainer was a wholesome entertainer that they were there in that audience. So that's his differentiation. That's his benchmark. So as people look to do business in whatever communities do, they have to figure out how to make their business different in order to generate the revenue, because the place was packed. And they have to be able to create the difference that generates the revenue that they need to see in order to have a profitable operation. And the business financials, for a person who does not have a track record yet, they can project based on their staff and themselves how many people they can see in a particular day, based on how many people they can see in a particular day, how much each client will generate, or if it's somebody with a product instead of a service, how many widgets they can sell in a particular day, in a particular week, in a particular month, and they can extrapolate that information to get annual projections of what their business will do. But they have to be realistic about it, and they can't overpromise, because if they overpromise and underdeliver, it's a problem for the business and the business credibility. So, and the accountants that they will work with have special tables and industry standards. The IRS has some very good information on their site about specific industries and the expectations. It has cost of living standards on their site. So the Internal Revenue Service alone, their website has a plethora of information to help you to arrive at some of those answers.
I definitely think that's a great start. It just really made me think of the earlier sections when you mentioned that, we should be looking at what other companies are doing based on what we're looking to start our business in, what our competitors are doing, and kind of figuring out how we can make it quote unquote better or more attractive to the customer is a great way to start as far as creating a financial projection. And I didn't even really think about to consider the staff as a factor in that, but that's definitely a major thing to think about, especially if you're kind of solo entrepreneur. That's a lot of different hats you have to wear, and you have to factor in how much time everything is going to take you and how many billable working hours you can accommodate.
You can't be the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and the chief salesman and be very successful at it all. Right. That's a very valid point. You have to look at other people in order to supplement. Your time as the visionary and the entrepreneur has a premium to it, and certainly you can find a way to pay associates smaller sums of money than your vision can create. I mean, smaller sums of money which are consistent with what your vision can create for the entire operation, because you may see yourself as an entrepreneur and the CEO of the company at a value maybe $200, $500 an hour, but you're not going to pay the associates that work with you at that level because they're not thinking or have the same responsibility for developing the vision that you do. So you may pay them significantly less in order to carry out the exercise that your vision sort of entails in order to get to the revenue stream that supports them as well as you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Essentially, those are the major sections of a business plan. Different industries and different ideas might have more added onto it, especially if you're looking for funding or from a venture capitalist or a bank. There might be additional sections, or there might not be as many sections as we outlined, but those are the major nuts and bolts as far as a basic business plan.
And there are many types of software that you can use, including some provided by the Small Business Administration, that will allow you to put your business plan together at whatever level of detail you require. You just have to research them. And there's too many for, I think, Russell, for your eye to try to enumerate, but I think people, individuals looking to start a business and wanting to use software for a business plan can find and determine. Please do not consider this an endorsement for software or business planning software. What we're saying is that you may find the software that specifically meets your needs by researching the types of software available. But you can also write it from experience in an outline, and we've provided the outline. You just have to fill in the blanks, do the research to answer the questions that we've outlined here.
Mm-hmm. And getting a second opinion as far as reviewing your business plan can also be something that's very beneficial. SCORE, which is a network of retired business owners, would definitely be a great resource for you when you start creating your business plan, being that there are several different volunteers that have worked in different industries that can kind of give you some insight on what your target should be and how certain sections should include certain information that would help you become successful.
P.S. By the way, SCORE, which Russell just mentioned, is a set of retired individuals. They provide consults for free, and so does the SBA. And in most major cities, these entities are available with consultants you can meet with. And I've worked with several of them in more than one area, and they're great to work with. And mind you, they're not going to do the work for you. They'll help you or guide you through the process. So don't expect that they will write the plan for you or do the research for you. They'll help you to put it together and guide you through the process.
And that's what we're here for as well, to help guide you through the process and answer any questions you may have. And feel free to email myself at Raza@thinkingoutloudinc.com, or you can contact us through the website, thinkingoutloudinc.com.
Always a pleasure, Russell.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Phipps. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Journey of Entrepreneurship podcast. To stay in contact with your hosts and to access more content and resources, go to journeyofentrepreneurship.com. Together, we will make this journey the best ever.